Hello, this video is going out extremely late and it probably has like 5 views because the algorithm will not bless me on this day, will not reward me for being very extremely late. It's just been a very hard couple of days and I've just, all of the sadness, all of the fed upness and all of the what am I doing? Yeah, all of that stuff, and it just has not, the energy to film has just not been there. But I don't want to mess up my schedule. I have some videos planned for the next few weeks that I'm really excited for, so I don't want to like slip into an accidental break, because I just knew that if I didn't upload one video it would just be like a self-fulfilling pattern where I just would let myself off with the other ones, and I'd be really sad about that because some of them I'm excited for, so. But today I want to do the Derry Girls book tag, and it's a little bit, it's not cheating, but I've not actually seen all of Derry Girls, and partly the reason is I've been in a very low mood, and tag videos are really fun to do when you're in sort of a not very, I guess, erudite mood, because it doesn't take very much effort to come up with the selections, and it's just a really easy way to like have a criteria and then talk about those books instead of having to actually think on my own, because that's hard, you know? But I do feel like a bit of a fraud because I haven't watched Derry Girls from start to finish. I did start watching it a couple of years ago, when I think when it first came on Netflix, and I did like the first couple of episodes that I saw, but Erin was really quite grating, and I think that's why I stopped watching. But I really want to get back into it, and I think I was definitely in a low mood when I was watching it, and that always tends to colour my judgment and my enjoyment of things. So I really want to get back to it because it really seems like the sort of thing that is right up my street. Coming of age is my genre, and like girls being funny and awkward and iconic is just my exact thing. So it's a show that I'm really excited to get to, and now I finally fucking finished watching Sex and the City for the first time for some inconceivable reason. I didn't even enjoy it. I mean, I did, well, I don't know. I think I just wanted my fix of New York, having done my, you know, books and films set in New York video. I was just thinking about New York, and I've already seen Gossip Girl like a million times, and I thought, what is new that I can watch? And sometime soon I'll be watching Girls, which is another New York based series. But anyway, the gap in between Sex and the City and Girls is all for Derry Girls. All for Derry Girls. I will be watching it, I promise. And this tag was created by the wonderful Aoife over at Pretty Purple Polka Dots. I love Aoife's channel so much, so if you haven't gone and subscribed to her yet, what are you doing? I will leave all of her links below, of course, and I hope you enjoy the tag. Also, there's no bloody way I'm getting all the books down from my shelf. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The will is not there today. The will to do things is just not, it's not here. So I will be inserting images of the covers of the books that I'm talking about, but I do own all of them. So the first prompt is Erin, and the prompt for this is a book it took you a while to warm to, which I find so funny because I think the reason I didn't fall in love with Derry Girls immediately was because I do find Erin quite grating. And for this one I think I'm gonna go with modern fairy tales, and controversial, I don't think I've warmed to it yet. So this book is a bind up of 3 novels set in Holly Black's Fae universe, and I am a huge fan of Holly Black's Cruel Prince trilogy, which is also set in the same universe, but Cruel Prince came out way later. So obviously I read the Cruel Prince series first, and then when I found out that, you know, several of the side characters in Cruel Prince have a whole series about them that she wrote about 10 years ago, I was, you know, all up for it, and they released this, you know, pretty new bind up, you know, as Cruel Prince was coming out, and so I bought it. And I think from memory I read the first novel in the bind up and I'm about 100 pages into the second, and I don't know why I just stopped reading it. I just think it wasn't compelling me in the same way. All the things I loved about the Fae universe in the Cruel Prince books weren't in this book, because, you know, it's the characters and the sort of tension and the enemies to lovers, all the stuff that I loved about Cruel Prince isn't really present in modern fairy tales, but it's something that I'm still hoping to return to, so hopefully I can detach it enough from Cruel Prince and sort of love it in its own right. But I think Holly Black's writing has really come on in like the 10 years since, and it sort of feels like you're reading a different author, and her writing in The Cruel Prince is so much more compelling and lyrical and all of that, and that's just sort of what was missing when I went back to this, but there's still time. I could still warm to it in the future, maybe. The next prompt is Michelle, so talk about a strong female character. And for a while this phrase really annoyed me, because I think when people talked about strong female characters, there was only one type of character they were really talking about, and it was like, you know, Katniss, Triss, all the sort of, you know, dystopian badass girls that could beat you up and all of this. While those characters are fun, I do definitely get a kick out of, you know, seeing women be badass and you know, beating up men. Always a good time. What I tend to appreciate more is like complexity in my female characters. So yes, they can be strong, yes, they can be badass, but also they don't shy away from showing their moments of weakness, and they're just human like the rest of us. And a book that I think really illustrated this so well was The Disreputable History of Frankie Landau Banks. And what pissed me off at the time that I read it, and I read all the reviews that were coming out for it, is that people were angry that Frankie wasn't a good role model, and that she was lying all the time, and that she was deceitful, and that she really hurt people, and that her actions shouldn't be forgiven or celebrated or glorified in the way that they seem to be in the book. And like, Frankie's like 16, 17. I did stupid stuff when I was 16, 17. I did cringeworthy stuff when I was 16, 17. And I think there's such a problem in the book community in general, but especially in YA, of really putting female characters on a pedestal. And it's so stupid, because it's like, these characters are teenagers. We should expect them and allow them to make mistakes and be problematic. And just the act of writing about problematic people doesn't mean we're condoning it. You know, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And Frankie was such an interesting character. The whole book is set in this very elite boarding school that Frankie goes to, and obviously she's a very privileged young woman. She comes from money, but then she finds out that there is this, you know, secret boys club at her school that her boyfriend is a part of, and this really obviously irritates her. So she comes up with a plan to infiltrate their club and just takes over all of their pranks and plans all of these iconic activities that obviously the boys then get the credit for, and it's like Frankie is the mastermind behind the whole thing. But also, yeah, she is a bit of a liar, and she is a bit of a kind of scrappy teen, and she's angry at being made to feel like a second-class citizen when, you know, she already has all of the other privileges that come with life. You know, all of the boys in her school are going to graduate or whatever and go on to have very easy rides, but she will always be second best because of being a woman and being a young woman. And E. Lockhart does a really great job of portraying this dichotomy and this sort of anger, but then also being very aware that Frankie is also very privileged, and she's not this big victim either. It's a very intricate balancing act. I think that's what makes the book so compelling, and Frankie such an interesting character, because yeah, she's strong and she's cool and we would all love to be her or have a friend like her, but she is also vulnerable and angry and sad, and, you know, does make mistakes, and I think that's something that we need to celebrate. And I've gone on a huge tangent, but yeah, the phrase strong female character does sort of conjure up one image, one type of character, and I think there can be so many other definitions of what makes women strong, and sometimes, you know, a show of strength is showing weakness, you know, and being vulnerable with people, and that's something that we need to celebrate more. And that's my little soapbox moment. Thank you very much. The next prompt is Claire, which is an LGBT romance. Bonus points if it's an FF romance, and this is going to come as such a cliche, but Evelyn Hugo. It's my pride and joy. I have not really stopped thinking about that book since I read it. I cannot wait to see it on screen, because it obviously follows Evelyn, who is this film star and has had this iconic film career akin to someone like Marilyn Monroe or Bette Davis, someone in that golden age of Hollywood. And just the visuals that brought up in my head when I was reading it, obviously as like a film graduate, it really excited me to be in this world of like the huge, big, sort of Hollywood sets, and I cannot wait to see that. And also the romance between Evelyn and a friend of hers is makes your heart ache. It really does. I love Evelyn Hugo so much. It's such a good book. The next prompt is Orla, a character with their head in the clouds, and from memory Orla comes across as sort of ditzy, and I don't really know if I can think of a character like that, but I love the description of, you know, a character with their head in the clouds. And if I was going along just that, I would have to go with Laszlo Strange from Strange the Dreamer, which is very typical answer for me, but he just is so in love with stories and myths and legend and fairy tales, and that's why it's called Strange the Dreamer. Everyone calls him a dreamer because he lives his life in pursuit of these stories, in pursuit of these big epic emotions, and it very much is a character. I think he has his heart set on the clouds and some big adventure that has yet to meet him, and this is such a gorgeous book. Please read it. The next prompt is James, so a translated book. And I realise that I don't read much translated fiction. That's something that I really want to change in the future now. But I think my favourite translated works will always come back to the fairy tales. So Grimm's fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. These texts are just so seminal to the way that we understand stories, to the way that we interpret stories, to the way that we grow up. They're just so integral. Part of my dissertation was about fairy tale iconography in cinematic depictions of girlhood. So I wrote a lot about this iconic imagery that really permeates our psyche when we're kids, and then that really resonates with us all throughout our lives. You know, seeing an image of a girl in a red cloak in a forest will always have associations with Red Riding Hood. Those stories are so seminal to the way that we visually communicate with each other and with the world, and so fairy tales all the way will always be the most important sort of translations, because they transcend language and boundaries and cultures. Every culture has their own version of those stories, and I just think, yeah, it's just the ultimate work of translation, because everyone has those sort of myth tales from their childhood that are so interwoven into how you see and understand what's around you. Interesting. The next prompt is Sister Michael, a book you studied at school. I studied a lot of books at school, but the ones that I always find myself talking about are The Bloody Chamber, which I've mentioned so many times on this channel. It's one of my favourite books of all time. Gothic fairy tales. Again, we're back to fairy tales, but iconic, beautiful. And that was part of a Gothic module, and I have very fond memories of that module as a whole. So as part of that we studied The Bloody Chamber, Macbeth, which is my favourite Shakespeare play ever, because I grew up in Scotland and I legally can't say another one is my favourite. That's not true, but it feels like that. And then we also studied Dr. Faustus, which is about Faustus who makes a deal with the devil, and I loved that play as well so much. And then I recently read Addie LaRue, which also is about a deal with the devil. So all of these things were very up my street. I was living my best life studying our Gothic module at school, and it very much is the sort of stories that I would love to read and write and just immerse myself in, because they just conjure up, but like I said, these sort of images that are just so intrinsic and we don't really understand where they come from. They're just built into us, these sort of ancient images of fairy tales and the dark things. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. Just iconic imagery. The next prompt is Granda Joe, a grumpy character you can't help but love. And it's been a while since I've read him, but I want to go with Kaz just because I've been rereading Shadow and Bone for Shannon's little read-along. I'm having such a good time because I'm a nostalgic girl before anything else, so I'm really enjoying that, and also very much excited for Shadow and Bone, the TV show dropping on Netflix, which also incorporates the Six of Crows characters, and I'm so excited to see my baby Kaz on the screen. I'll be very upset if they mischaracterize him. But to be honest, it's been ages since I've read Six of Crows, so I might not love Kaz as much as I think I do, but from memory, Kaz is a very, not even, yes, grumpy, but more, I'd say, guarded. He is sort of that, like, typical YA edgy character with a tragic backstory that, like, doesn't want to let you in, but then, oh, Kaz. The next prompt is Ma Mary and Dad Jerry, your favourite bookish parents. And for this one I immediately thought of like a main character who has cool parents, but obviously in YA especially, which is mostly the genre that I know, a lot of them are orphans, so that was hard to think. But then most recently the book with parents that has stood out to me the most was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and this is actually about the parents. It's told from the point of view of the parents, and there is a vampire that is trying to infiltrate in their small town, suburban, American, southern community. And it's about these middle class, suburban housewives who basically try and tackle this vampire themselves in order to protect their children and the community, and they're kind of not believed widely by the rest of the community. And it's just such a fun but also frustrating book. I give it 5 stars, loved it so much, and so much of that book is about not underestimating women and who are just wives or mothers or stay-at-home women, because that's not all anyone is, and it's a very fun, very good read that I really recommend. The next prompt is Jenny Joyce, your favourite bookish clever clog, and for this I would always have gone with Hermione Granger, and she still has a very big place in my heart. But that's a very obvious answer, so I sort of prompted myself to think a little bit more about this one. And I'd also like to say Jude from A Little Life, which I recently read. It's a very harrowing book, so it's not something that you would necessarily associate with someone being a clever clogs, but I really enjoyed the aspect of the book that was about Jude's career, and also sort of what I talked about with the strong female character prompt. I think, intelligence also takes so many different forms, and just thinking about someone being like bookish clever is not the only type of clever you can be, and Jude has so much emotional intelligence despite all of the trauma that he's been through, and the way that he communicates with the world is really interesting, and yeah, I don't know if that's like really off topic, but it's what I've gone with, so we're gonna go with it and move on. The next prompt is Aunt Sarah, a book with a pretty cover. Oh, and I can actually reach this one, so I might as well just show it, and it is this edition of The Wind in the Willows. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It has this foiling cover and it's just so pretty. The annoying thing is that it's a strange shape, so it doesn't really fit anywhere on my shelf, but I just think she is stunning. And if you want to see more of this book, this edition in particular, and the illustrations inside, I did a video a while back which was a sort of flip through, but it had the audio from the audiobooks that I also own. I love Wind in the Willows, if you couldn't tell, but that video is meant to just be like a sort of relaxing, calming time, and you can listen to the audiobook of the story whilst looking at the illustrations in this gorgeous edition. So I will leave that linked below if that interests anybody, because it took a long time to make, so I would be grateful if you wanted to check it out. And the next prompt is Uncle Colm, a book you can't shut up about, and honestly I've already mentioned 2 of them already in this video, so I might as well just say it with me. It's The Bloody Chamber and Strange the Dreamer, which they don't rhyme, but chamber, dreamer, same energy, I don't know. But yeah, those are definitely the books that I think I mention the most on my channel and that I champion the most. Yeah, just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous books all around. I will never run out of praise for either of those books. Beautiful. And the last prompt is to tag people, which I'm always really nervous about because I don't want to bother anybody. But if you are a fan of Derry Girls, or you're a fraud like me who hasn't watched all of Derry Girls but want to do this tag, consider yourself tagged by me. You can say that in the video. I give you permission. Go forth, go ahead and have all of the fun with this tag. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I promise I'll be back on some sort of regular schedule soon. I just gotta deal with my little brain funk and just kick myself and move on. That sounds quite aggressive, but I'm fine, really I'm fine. I just gotta get back in the swing of things and stop feeling sorry for myself is what I need to do. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Bye.